Shit.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, to today's stream where we are going to talk about how to escape or break out of the Matrix. This is the Lost Boys podcast. I apologize for being a bit late. We're trying to get our Rumble stream or sync set up. So, guys, now we will be syncing to Rumble. So, if you're tired of the YouTube restrictive environment, which I am as a creator, we are now on Rumble. And at some point, we'll probably eventually migrate everything over there so we can talk a little more freely, a little off the cuff. But if you are catching me on YouTube, please do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave any comments down below. When you subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell, and then you actually have to go in and set your settings to receive notifications from my channel. Otherwise, you will have no idea when we're going live because YouTube does not like this type of content. Hence the topic, breaking out of the Matrix. So we are trying to do that with our Rumble right now. And then, guys, if you get any value out of this, feel free to share it with your friends too, or recommend us to anyone who this content may help. So that being said, we can go ahead and kick it off. Steve, how you doing today? Living free outside of the Matrix?
Living free of the Matrix, you know.
Right. So let's start off by, what does that mean? So for guys that might be new to this type of content, so you have these spaces on the internet. A lot of them are called like the pills. So like red pill space, blue pill, black pill, purple pill, whatnot. Originally, that comes from the movie The Matrix. I believe it came out in 1999, starring Keanu Reeves, and he had a decision to make. It's like, hey, do you want to take the red pill and then step outside of the Matrix and see the world for what it really is, knowing you can never go back? Right. Or do you want to take the blue pill, stay within the Matrix, and not know otherwise? So those kind of terms have been popularized in recent years on the internet, and a lot of guys fall into ideologically, sometimes they call it a praxeology, they fall into these certain sorts of camps. So the expression or terms such as escape the Matrix, it comes from that. That's its genesis or its origin. Now, in modern terms, what that applies to as far as just breaking out of mainstream society, breaking out of the societal programming that was instilled in us by our parents, our peers, our teachers, society at large, our employers, anyone that may have had an influential position at any point in your life. So that's what we're referring to when we say escape from the Matrix. And again, even more recently, that term has been popularized by people on the internet, such as Andrew Tate, who was like the most popular man in the world just a couple months ago before they put the kibosh on that. They'll often let these rising stars get to a point of stardom or fandom, and they're like, okay, and then they fly a little too close to the sun, like poor old Icarus, and then they have to strike them on down. So again, as I mentioned, kicking this off, we are experimenting streaming and syncing to alternative video platforms to where I'm not going to run into the censorship issues that I've been plagued with since I started this channel. Steve, what say you?
Oh, we have mouths that need to be uncensored.
Yeah, right. We're a bunch of dirty boys over here.
Yeah, I mean, we're just tell the truth the way that it is, right? And I think that's part of step one is like, quit fucking being so PC about bullshit. I mean, at the end of the day, we're going through a bunch of random, weird fucking issues as people in the world, much less, I can speak to America, but we're going through a bunch of weird shit in America that we shouldn't be going through at all. It shouldn't even be considered to be a topic to be spoken about in the mainstream media because it's not they're not mainstream issues that they're making mainstream issues, right? And so breaking free from the Matrix, I guess, is cut off Twitter. don't get on Twitter. Number one, that's pretty bad. But yeah, I mean, just issues like whether it's racially related or sex related or financially related or whatever, you just quit consuming other people's shit. Like it's just not healthy anymore.
The way I think about it is learn how to be an independent thinker. And back when I was growing up or even going through college, I went to college in the early 2000s, they were still teaching students to think critically and independently. Like, yes, there's a liberal kind of a leftist slant, but the Overton window has shifted so far left that I was thinking this at the gym earlier. A lot of my beliefs, like they're considered right of center, or like even some crazy people like leftist extremists would consider them extreme right views. But I think back, like a lot of my views were formed in the 90s, and back then it was really progressive. I don't understand it. Like at what point, good example, for example, like the corporatocracy. Back then, that was traditionally a Republican issue. And then now at some point, the party switched to where the Democrats are co-opting with the corporations to create a corporatocracy. My views have not shifted. They have not changed. Society's views had shifted. And as you mentioned, it's really just the polar extremes. It's not even necessarily the mainstream. Most people, to be
Yeah.
honest, don't know what the hell's going on, nor do they care. They've got bigger things. They're worried about their world, their lives, their friends, their families, their inner circle. And then, okay, at the end of the day, they kick back, maybe pull out a six-pack or smoke a spliff and turn on the news, Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, whatever you fall into ideologically. All of the news stations are biased. They're not news. They
They're
are
all
not
bullshit.
journalists. They
They
are
all talk shit.
propagandists.
Yeah, they all talk shit.
And people kind of know that going into it, but they go in and they self-select these media sources, and it reinforces their ideology, or they're spoon-fed an ideology, and then you go about, it's called the you have the kind of bias effect where, okay, like I have this new idea in my head, you're walking around reality, and then you see that play out. The best example is like an old marketing example where if you're thinking of buying a yellow car, then all of a sudden you notice every yellow car on the road. You're like, oh my God, everyone drives a yellow car. And that's kind of what happens to people. And the internet has shifted that to the point where back in the day, the news was brokered and it was curated by big corporations or powers that be. You turn on Walter Cronkite, and whatever he had to say, hey, it's 6 p.m. We're going to read the news to you. Going on in the world today in Vietnam, da da da. And that's where you got your source of information. But now you can self-select. Like the internet has removed that gatekeeper, and anyone like me can create content. I don't need permission from a radio station or a local news station or a mainstream corporate broadcasting station. I can pop on a couple $100 microphone, a $10 ring light with my iPhone hooked up to it, go live, and here I am. So
live from the living room,
right? So people gravitate towards these more niche type circles, and I think what that does is that the big guys are still largely curating, or they're determining what it is that people are talking about. But I think they take it a step further. There's so much competition. They're like, okay, now, well, like CNN's a good example. We don't have a lock on the 24-hour news cycle anymore. Guys like me can get out there and be like, hey, I live in Mexico City. I have a cell phone in my pocket. If I see something going on, I can pull it out, record it,
boom,
post it to the internet. I'm a journalist now. So the big guys are losing market share. They're losing power. So they fall into these ideological camps. They've been co-opted by the corporations too, and they still control the larger societal dialogue or narrative. But then people go to these niche internet groups and they reinforce that, or they take it to the extremes. And
100%.
For me, I always knew in my life that at some point the idea of America was going to be challenged or possibly even jeopardized or at risk of maybe even not being a thing anymore. But I didn't realize it was going to happen this early in my life. It happened really quickly.
And who would have thought overnight it would be our own society that would do it? Like that's the craziest part is like our government. Like I'm not just gonna say our government is against us, even though it's kind of obvious. But man,
all governments are against their people. That's what governments do, and our founding fathers knew that. Speaking as an American, for our Canadian listeners, and I got some Aussies and UK people too. So welcome.
Yeah. I mean, this is just getting out of hand. Like when did trans issues become a thing? We'll talk about that. The Matrix. When did we even care? At the end of the day,
that's what I would say. When did anyone care? Like they've always been around. Like
always.
What was it like back in the day? Like Edgar J. Hoover. Like he was a cross-dresser, and people like everyone kind of knew it. It was kind of like behind closed doors, or people within a social circle. They'd have these whisperings or these murmurings, like, oh yeah, like he's great as the FBI director, but you know, in his own life, he's kind of a quirk, he's kind of a quack, he's kind of a queer. Like
he sucks dick in his free time, you know.
Those words literally mean odd, but like no one really cared. They're like, oh, he's doing a good job. He's fighting communism. Fucking awesome. But yeah, he dressed up as a woman at home. When did it go from that to like, oh, we have to teach kindergartners about this alternative lifestyle, and if you don't like it, then you're the problem. To me, it's the weirdest thing that we got to a point where people care. People care so much about people's sexual fetishes and who they want to fuck. That is the weirdest thing to me. It's like, and I mentioned the other day in our top 10% group, in a post, that I don't use terms like alpha versus beta anymore. I use terms girl or guy, people who fuck and people who don't fuck. And people who aren't fucking are people that have this weird dissonant energy that are causing all these goddamn problems. Because if you're getting laid on the regular, and not only getting laid, like not pity sex from your wife, but if you're having good fucking earth shattering, body twitching, orgasmic, spiritual, like out of this world sex, then you don't really care who other people are fucking or what their sexual identity, expression, whatever those nonsense mainstream terms are. Right. But at what point did we get to this point? Because it is absurd to anyone who has over 100 IQ.
Well, when guys started wearing dresses, putting on makeup, and calling themselves girls, that's when it became a thing. I mean, at the and I'm not talking about like actual like I was having this. I just went through this whole thought earlier because I was part of like I know Escape the Matrix is like go make a bunch of money, let's fucking do that. But we're
Yeah,
talking
and we'll
about
get into
the
that.
current issue side of it is like dudes that are actually cross dressers are now calling themselves trans because it's cool.
They're calling themselves actual women. They're going into
Yeah,
like mixed martial
yeah.
arts and like beating the shit out of actual biological females. And for me, again, I grew up in the 90s. So like there was the liberalization of America has been happening for a few generations now, or a few decades. And in the 90s, it was getting there. So it's like, okay, equal rights for women, like as men don't hit women. But even when I was a kid, it's like,
Sweet,
okay,
I'm good with
don't
that.
enact physical violence upon women. And then football tryouts, okay, we have girls on the team. Hey, Jaron, go hit Tiffany. I'm like, what the hell? I'm getting mixed messages here. And then I signed up for volleyball. They didn't offer boys volleyball when I was in middle school. So I signed up for it. I was like, I want to play volleyball. I enjoy playing volleyball. And they suspended me. Like, oh, do you think this is funny or something? I'm like, well, there's chicks wrestling and playing football. Why can't I play volleyball?
No
So
shit.
I sat
That's
out of
funny.
school for
Or
3 days.
baseball. Baseball's another one too.
Yeah, I
Heavy.
love how getting suspended is a punishment. Like, well, school sucks anyways. So
Yeah.
you're gonna send me home so I can do my own shit because I have better
I'm
things to do
fucking
than
down. Let's go.
sit here
I've
with a
been
bunch of
suspended for 10
retards.
years from a job,
Yeah,
so I got fired last time, and I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore.
yeah, Jesus Christ. But growing up during that time, and I say a lot of people kind of politically, socially, culturally, they're really kind of aligned with whatever was trending when they were growing up. So I like my political views, they're really kind of like the 90s. I was thinking this in the gym, like the whole trans thing. Like back in the day, it was don't ask, don't tell. Like at what point did that not become a good policy? Like, oh, hey, Bill, you're
Oh,
new on
hey,
the
we
job.
should probably let everybody know who that guy fucks instead of
Yeah.
oh man,
It's like, hey,
yeah,
Steve, I'm Jaron. Nice to meet you. Hey, looks
that's
like we're
it.
gonna be working on this project together. Oh, who do you like to fuck in your free time? Oh, I can't work with this guy. Dude, do you know your shit? Do you know how to get
It's
this
funny
done?
because that was the start of this. That was actually
Uh-huh.
the start of this. This started when they dropped that policy. I don't remember what it was, 2018, 2019, something like that, where they were just like, oh, well, now we got to know that Timmy's gay or Sergeant whoever the fuck, right? Like,
And we have to actively promote the lifestyle. Like,
no,
what does that have to do with your ability to be effective as a fighting force?
I don't know, but I
I'm
believe
still
that
waiting for that answer.
gender reassignment or not gender reassignment surgery, but you can get tits. The military will give you tits if you want tits.
Let's call things by the right name. I remember years ago when they had the whole like circumcision versus anti-circumcision debate, and they're like, "Well, for American men, because like there's most cultures in the world don't do it," which I enjoyed as a foreigner down here in Mexico, because girls are like, "Oh, whoa, like that's a pretty penis." I'm like, "Yeah, I've never seen one like that before without that fucking anteater and all that weird shit around it." Sorry, European and Latin friends out there, but
It's so fucking weird.
most women aesthetically prefer it circumcised. But back in the day when that was the trending debate, and why did people talk about it? Because mainstream media told you this was important. We have to talk about it. If they weren't pushing it on you, no one would really even care. Like
Nobody
just kind
even
of do
fucking
whatever.
noticed. We're talking
Yeah,
hundreds or thousands of years of people not getting the fucking cap chopped off. What the
and
fuck are we talking about?
but all of a sudden when that became part of the mainstream narrative, it's been a few years since that's kind of
Yeah,
came and gone now, that trending
it's been a
topic.
while.
But they would always say, well, let's call it what it really is. It's genital mutilation. Okay.
Got it.
Yes, good point.
Cool.
So gender reassignment surgery, let's call it what it really is. You're lopping off dicks. Do you know what that is? That's genital mutilation. It's not even mutilation, it's amputation.
Oh man,
It's absurd to me, but that's just an example of
it's
the
a perfect
matrix,
example though because
the
people don't
current
want to call it what
mainstream.
it is.
And let's maybe back it up a bit in terms of, let's talk society. Like, how did we get to this point? And then at what point, personally, Steve, did you, and I can share my story, did you decide like, hey, this isn't working for me, it's time to unplug for the matrix? And we've both kind of gone different routes and done that in our own
Yeah,
way, which is
right.
why I think this will develop into a decent conversation. And then, guys, if you have any questions in the chat, go ahead and leave them. We'll probably get to them at the end. I think for these streams, we're going to try it out for the next week or so. We're going to shorten them up to about an hour or so, since we're trying to grow an audience on the Rumble platform. It looks like I'm not going to be as restricted as much as YouTube at all.
God, I hope not. Otherwise, we're already canceled.
Yeah, our first video we did on Rumble got more views on YouTube, and we had like 5 followers yesterday, and I have like 3.1 thousand now on YouTube. So it's just not getting out there to the audience.
Yeah, totally.
So as I mentioned, guys, those who've been following me for a while, I'm trying some different format stuff. But once we get the secret sauce or that recipe dialed in, then we're off to the races. But let's back up a bit. So I would argue to a degree that the Matrix always existed. So back back in the day, it was historically the church for the longest time in the Western world. And then I remember
Right.
when
Yeah.
well, I wasn't alive in 1492 or whenever it was when the Gutenberg press was printed. The priesthood was like, oh my God, like we're gonna have these peons and peasants able to read the holy word, which people get weird about religion, and I can see it if you get dogmatic about it. I recommend people don't get dogmatic about anything, but really, it's just a book of wisdom. It's a book of lessons. It's the owner operator manual for the system of the Western cultured human being. And the more you follow it, the better life you're going to have in most cases. The more you deviate from it, like the last car I had was an old Porsche Boxster. Guess what? I pulled out that owner's operator's manual and I followed all the maintenance to a T. Those cars, Porsches, are known for their reliability, never had any problems. Now, if I started skipping oil changes and fucking around with the car or doing whatever, then I can expect that it'll probably still run. It's a well-engineered vehicle, and as humans, we're perfectly designed organisms or creatures or very comprehensive systems. But if you deviate from that, well, then you're going to experience problems. So I would say that that's probably the original matrix, maybe historically religion. Even before then, like some of like the oral generational traditions that were passed down. And then with the communication revolutions, we've had a bunch recently. Like in the span of overall human history, we've had a ton of communication revolutions. Printing press, industrial revolution, radio, television, and then internet, which gives anyone an audience instantly at the snap of your fingers.
Absolutely.
So the matrix, there's always been a matrix, and the matrix has always been challenged. But I think the problem now is that we have, and I've mentioned this a lot, people don't live in the analog world anymore. They get sucked into the digital world. It's the sense that we're almost like we're literally cyborgs. And for people where they live in their phone, and you can walk down the street, you see younger people doing this, face buried in the phone, or you see like a family out at a dinner or something, like the little kids, they don't even look up. They're not even there. They're not like, okay, physically they're present, but they're not there. And they live in the digital world, and that's fine. But in the digital world, the matrix is like the big tech companies, your FANG companies, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google. So Google has become your god. That is the matrix. And anyone that goes against the word of the Google gods, well, you're going to have a hard time. And I think that's what people are experiencing now in modern society. And of course, the liberalization of America, the 60s, radical leftist movements and some of those progressive things, which I'm not against progressive, just progress in general, but I think they've taken it a little too far. Like some of their arguments are good. Like people should be proprietors of their own labor. Yeah, I get it. But to take it to the extreme that it's gotten to now, we're like, there's literally serious conversations where PhD, like people with 3 letters behind their names that have spent years in academia, are making an honest to God argument that it's a good idea to chop kids' genitals off. That is fucking insane. That is absurd.
Yeah, purely.
So at what point did that happen? And that's just kind of my take. Steve, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah.
Or kind of, what's your take on how it started and how we got here?
How it started, I actually think it started like from just a measurable thought is like, I think it started back with our grandparents, right? That when they started pushing mortgages and marriages on people.
Oh, credit. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can
credit
afford
on
it.
people. Yeah. You can afford it. You can make payments. You got to just work for the man. No problem. You get a check every week. We'll take care of you. And that used to work, right? That used to work just fine. But they taught that to our parents, and our parents they succeeded in it too. There's plenty of our parents that are probably millionaires on paper that have some cash in the bank and they live pretty good lives and their houses are paid off and shit like that. There's plenty of those out there. There's also plenty of people that have lived paycheck to paycheck since the 70s, right? So coming to us, like you could kind of tell, like I was never a great student, not because I'm not intelligent, but because I knew it wasn't going to fucking matter at the end of the day. I forget what I was going. I forget where I was going with that.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day too. I was a fantastic student, but that didn't mean I was studious. I was thinking about this last night actually when I was a little kid, going back to like older generations. My grandpa was a college professor for years and years, and he's very well known in local education where I grew up. Founded our technical skills center, has his name on the building. And I remember when I was a kid, I really looked up to him academically. I was like, wow, you're so smart and you're so erudite and well spoken and well traveled and just a worldly older seasoned gentleman. How do I become like that? And I asked him, I was like, Grandpa, what do I need to learn first? He's like, learn how to learn. So he told me that when I was like 5 years old. So going through school, it's like, okay, don't study for the test, study the test. How is the test made? all of the answers for multiple choice tests are contained within the test. So you create this framework and these strategies. You don't have to study shit. Like I didn't even study for my master's degree. I did a lot of research because I'm a nerd. So I'm always forming like a working hypothesis and working through usually multiple ones at any given time. But for me, like a lot of people were terrible at school because it's a memorization and recall system. Okay, I'm not good at memorizing things and I'm not good at recall. If you took me to trivia night tonight, I'd probably be pretty terrible. I'd be the anchor of the team. I'd be holding everyone down. But if you put like a series of information in me, like if there's a panoramic view of information and there's 100 data points and you only give me 10, I can figure out how those go together very quickly and make usually pretty accurate inferences as far as how that trend or that sequence is going to continue. So it's a completely different approach. And in terms of academia, I broke the matrix too. Or when it came time to learning Spanish, I learned that language in a couple months. But people ask me all the time, like, dude, how'd you learn it so well? I was like, I didn't study any of these programs because my goal wasn't like learn Spanish as a language. My goal is to learn how to learn languages. And then you got it. Especially when you're living here, like, okay, I have a working model for how to learn languages in my head. I live in a place that doesn't speak English, and your brain just fills in the information. So you can break the matrix even as in terms of like your personal academic or societal programming level in your own mind. But a lot of people, I think, aren't given the permission to do so, nor do they know it's even possible to do so. It's like, oh, this is the way things should be.
Like, what else am I mean, and a lot of them don't want to either because it requires work, right? And
it doesn't require much work. It's harder not to.
Yeah, it going back to the marriages and mortgages scam that our parents were were trying to perpetuate into us. They sold them the dream, right? They sold them the dream. They called that the American dream up until the early 2000s, or even now, I guess. I think we're all kind of just figuring it out, right? Get married, have kids, buy a house. That was all created by the banking and the government just to take money from us.
3 months salary for a diamond ring. Where did that come from?
I don't even think not my salary. I don't think so.
You know who did? Yeah, it was the
not my salary. You're not getting no fucking ring that much.
That's a good test when you're dating a new girl. Like, hey, if it ever got to that point where we got married, I'd want to do a cultured diamond. It's like a third of the price, and they're literally perfect. And if a girl's like, no, I want a blood diamond that's harvested by slaved African children, then you're like, all right, then this chick she's not on my level.
Yeah. So that's actually a really interesting topic too. So because the internet is built on extremes, right? It's like you deal with you're either dealing with a gold digger or a poor chick, one or the other. It's like it's as if there's no middle ground. But the majority of people are pretty fucking normal and understand what is what, right? Like a 30, like for example, if I make 30,000 or I'm sorry, if I make $10,000 a month, no normal fucking female is going to expect a $30,000 ring. No normal female is going to expect that. Now you might go into the top 0.1% or 1% or 2% or whatever the number is of chicks, and they might expect it, but that's it. And now guys are being sold that all women are like that, and that's super matrixy too. It's like most people are just normal fucking people trying to make it week to week.
I think that really is it. And I'm going to piggyback on that point. So even guys that kind of conjure in the types of intellectual or online spaces where I typically hang out, or people that congregate in those areas, such as like the Crimson Capsule type spaces. Yes, I think there's a lot of good information in a lot of these spaces, but you have to pick and choose. You have to be very, very careful that you're not falling into someone else's belief system or ideological system, or you're not accepting it and swallowing it wholesale, to use like the pill type metaphor. So yeah, pick apart, take a look at it, pick it apart, chew it up, spit it out, swirl it around your mouth and swallow it at that point. But really learn to think independently, because what works for me might not necessarily work for you. What works for Steve doesn't necessarily work for me, but that doesn't mean that we can't collaborate. That doesn't mean we can't be friends. It doesn't mean we can't create shared experiences to get the most out of this life, the one we have. What happens afterwards, that's up to your belief system, but you are able to think independently. And a lot of people don't know that. And it's weird when I meet new people, usually within 2 minutes, I know their entire belief system. And people ask me, like, Jaron, you're really good with people. How do you figure them out so fast? I'm like, there's not much to figure out. I can listen to if they use certain words, then I know what their belief system is, and I just know what they think about most issues. Could be
Right.
wrong, but most people don't deviate from the mainstream. Not like mainstream, but like whatever their little pockets of content spaces, online space, and
Right. I
intellectual
mean,
spaces are.
collectively, people have, like, I said this yesterday, I believe on the podcast, that girls are a basis of 5 personality types, but guys are also a basis of 5 personality types, and most of those are surrounded by societal norms, like whatever's normal for where you grew up, how you grew up, in your region, in your state, in your city, whatever. Like that's. I mean, I totally lost my thought again.
We were talking about that last night in the post show. I get that every now and then when I speak Spanish. So I went to school down here like 20 years ago, and I'll say words or I don't use a lot of slang. I like to speak correctly because people hold you in higher regards, especially in a classist or a system that's very into like the social caste. So I like to be perceived as highly educated because I am. I went to a very good school
Right.
down here. But every now and then a slang word will slip out that I learned like 20 years ago, and I kind of date myself. And people are like, "Where are you from? Like, where'd you hear that?" Because they're words that I just don't hear out and about.
Anymore. Yeah.
When I'm in the streets anymore. But when I was learning the language, that's how people spoke. So going back to my point earlier, like you understand who people are or how they think based on the way they speak, the way they communicate, the way they present themselves, and that's why I'm such a big proponent of freedom of speech. Like, I don't like people trying to regulate speech. We talked about it yesterday in the podcast, like the word retard. Okay, obviously, I'm never going to use that word to describe a mentally handicapped person. That'd be super fucked up. But if I'm like, hey, I'm working on a car, like an older car with like a distributor cap, hey, retard the timing a bit, that is the correct word to use in that situation.
You're right.
Don't fucking regulate my speech. Now, if you have a low IQ, that's fine, but that's an issue for you to deal with. That is not a me problem. That's a fucking you problem.
Right. 100%.
Fix it. I get really
Yeah.
passionate about that. I don't like people regulating speech.
Well, you're one of the best speakers I've ever met. So.
Well, you're trying to regulate thoughts. You're trying to get in their fucking head. That's what sociopaths and psychopaths do.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, dude. Okay, so getting a little bit, tightening up a little bit on how to escape the matrix. Right.
Yeah. How'd you go about it? Or I'd say, first of all, let's define that. What does it mean to escape the matrix?
I think it's just to be an independent. For me, I guess it's earning money on my own time, on my own dime, i.e., solopreneurship, business, however that works. We're like freelancing, however that works, right? Getting out of regulating the client base that I have to be people that I like to work with. That kind of goes into the first one. Being in relationships with people who are positive and not consuming all the trash and not basically bringing negative energy to the situation, and financial freedom, I guess. It's and people staying on my phone, dude. I'm really bad about that. I tend to have my phone in my hand, whether I'm like walking or like going for a walk or whatever. I tend to have my phone in my hand like 80-90% of the time.
That's why I like these streams, because my phone's right there.
I know, mine's to my
Like,
left,
oh,
and I keep doing that fucking like.
Yeah, it's like, what do I do with my hands? I don't have a phone in it.
I know.
Anymore.
I've like moved around in my
I'm
chair
free.
60 fucking times. Yeah, exactly. And also just I mean, independent thinking, right? And that's why I say, like, if you're on social media, which we all are clearly, and you're on YouTube or whatever,
Yep.
you have to
follow me.
Yeah, follow us, right? You have to police the shit out of yourself. Like, that's the discipline, to be able to police yourself in the middle of like going on a social media binge, like a negative social media binge. I catch myself doing it on Twitter sometimes because all these fucking issues that are coming up, and my brain is just like it almost shuts off. And then my thumbs just
you get pissed off, and then you're like, you take a step outside of yourself, or you take a step
like
back.
It doesn't even affect
situation.
you.
You're like, why do I care?
Yeah, I mean, and the reality is, I don't want to care, right? And that's a big thing. I don't want to care, but I tend to care. With my personality type, I'm the type of person that if I see something that's written that's wrong, then I want to debunk it like immediately. I want to go after it immediately, and that's just a trigger in my head, and it's constant. So I have to constantly police myself on social, because I've already had my fucking Instagram profile deleted once.
Well, it comes down to having I call it like intelligent or intelligent honesty or integrity.
Right.
So for me, it's really hard. And I always say, like, the answers to the universe are literally in front of your fucking eyes. So I'm such a weirdo. I woke up at 3 a.m. last night. I don't know why this thought came into my head. Talking about like the circumcision versus non-circumcision thing. I think at some point someone asked me
something. Weird topic to pop in your head.
I think someone asked me about that yesterday at some point, because I spoke for like 10 hours yesterday. So
Yeah.
at some point in one of the many conversations I had, so that topic came up briefly. And then I was also talking about, like, when you move to Latin America, when you look for neighborhoods, or if you want to see signs of a country that's moving in a positive direction, is when graffiti turns into beautiful, colorful, artistic murals. And so I think my brain, somehow being hyperactive, combined those two, and I was asleep. I woke up and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, circumcised dicks are more aesthetic, because when you see penis graffiti, it's got the head on it, right? Yeah, like, it doesn't have the little fucking anteater sleeve. So weird thoughts in my head that pop in there. I've never heard that before. Maybe there's like a channel dedicated to that topic, but don't know where that came from. But things like that's the ability to independently think. And you guys let me know in the comments, like, okay, yeah, you're a fucking weirdo. Where'd that come from? Like, oh yeah, I never noticed that. Now that I put that thought in your head, you will notice that. And going back to one of my points earlier,
look at my own dick ever again the same way. Thanks for that.
That's what mainstream media does. It puts these thoughts in your head, so it creates the ability for your mind to go there, and then you start seeing these things, and it reinforces that, and you create those neural pathways. You create those neural networks in your brain to where it becomes a part of who you are, and that's what's really scary. Another example I use, a few months ago when that Dahmer series came out on Netflix.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday.
That was disturbing to watch, and it got to the point a few times, like, I don't want this shit in my brain. I don't want to look at reality that way. I don't want to be receptive to those things, because I will start to notice them, and the more you notice them, you'll reinforce those neural networks, and they'll become stronger. So, like, no, like, I'm usually questioning how to escape the matrix, especially for those of us that like live in the digital world. I make my money in the digital world, so I spend a lot of time behind a computer screen. But you really have to curate your own content. You have to filter out the trash. I had a chick over last Thursday. She was kind of on the nutty side. Talked about this yesterday in the post show, or in the private group that I manage. And this chick, Venezuelan girl, like real busty blonde girl, like real pretty girl, but she kept coming over and she wanted to like play DJ. I'm like, hey, just put on a fucking mix and let it run. I want to hang out with you. I don't want to be playing DJ every 3.5 minutes. We're changing songs and shit. It drives me nuts. And she's like, oh, I want Bad Bunny, or I want this guy. And then she kept going like, oh, Bad Bunny's the best. And I got to a point I was so annoyed. I'm like, listen, I'm an actual musician, and this music's fucking trash. This music is for low IQ people that don't have a musical ear. But for people like me, it gives me a headache. He's not good. He's not a singer. It's not decent music. It's not arranged correctly. It's not edited well. It's just shit, trash, low IQ, fucking ghetto music.
And I don't want that shit in my house. That's most of music today, though, dude. Everything is
terrible.
around. It's all the same 4 fucking chords too. That's the craziest thing. It's like
it's so easy to do covers because it's just the same progression over and over again.
Exactly. They're and it's all curated messages too. Like what writer out there, and there's probably a ton. So I'm just talking shit. But like,
it's a team of writers. Like
what writer out there's writing their own fucking music, like of their own experiences?
Anytime you have creativity by committee, then the sound always sucks. It's always terrible.
Yeah, it's sorry, I was just reading the comment.
Yeah, no,
I noticed that, and that's why I'm so tight on what I listen to as far as music. It's almost annoying to people. Like I'll listen to the same like 5 or 6 artists. They're all independent. None of them are on fucking. If they're on billboards, they're very low on the billboard, and it's all music that makes me feel good. Because if I got into like some heavy like hardcore rap shit or something like that, which I like, by the way. It's not a matter of not liking it or liking it or not liking it.
I like 90s rap.
What's with your brain, dude? Like, I think I'm a fucking gangster after 6 songs.
Right?
What the fuck?
Oh, dude. Tupac hit him up at the gym if you're having a bad day. My fofo, make sure my fucking kids don't grow. like I'm pumped up. Like, yeah. Like, fucking white guy from an upper middle class family with a master's degree. I'm like, yeah, I'm gangster. And then I come home, like I had a singing lesson earlier. I'm working on, I can hit a falsetto, but I can't hold it or sustain it or sing like in that range. I can get up there and hold it, but I have to come down very quickly. Otherwise I'm gonna like fuck up the inside of my head. So we're working on that. That's my concerted focus for the next few months. And so it's like, all right, I'm listening to Tupac at the gym. And then I come home and listen to George Michael. He's like hitting us. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, sweet.
That's so
like, all right. But
I
like,
can't
I
sing,
never,
so I'm not even gonna try.
I never liked George Michael as a kid. I'm like, oh yeah, he's a gay guy. Like what? For whatever reason, all the gay guys are really good singers. But I want to
Yeah.
hear a good falsetto. I don't care who the artist is. We saw like this whole trans movement, the Bud Light thing. I saw a meme like because I do have friends that like kind of lean more towards the left side. I'm not going to not be your friend just because you have different political beliefs. If you're a cool person, like most of my friends, we have mutual interests. Like we like traveling, we like eating healthy, we like fitness, and we like fucking hot chicks. So like if your political belief deviates a bit from me, like we don't even get into those topics. It's the
Well, I mean,
weirdest
me and
thing.
you are a perfect example. I could be pressed hard as a right wing conservative, not even extremist, but I would just figure I mean, we both grew up in kind of the from a conservative background, but like I am fundamentally conservative, and I didn't even realize it. Right? It's just a matter of how I grew up, and you being the more educated of the two of us, with paper at least, right?
I'm a 1990s liberal, but now I'm an extreme right winger. It's the craziest shit.
It doesn't make any sense. But we've been friends for over a decade, and it's like none of that shit fucking matters to the normal human. You're talking about the Bud Light thing, so fucking funny. America answered the question of how well we were going to tolerate that kind of bullshit on our fucking Bud Light cans.
Do gay dudes drink Bud Light?
I don't know.
Like, I don't hang out in that community, but like
I
for
think
me,
we
it's
should
always
put up a poll on Rumble. Do gay dudes drink Bud Light?
Yeah, open a Grindr account, and I'm like, hey, not looking for dick, but I want to know. Like, go to this link, answer this poll.
I bet we would get a bunch of gay followers because they would think it's fucking hilarious.
Like, yeah,
or they would hate us. One or the other.
That's one thing too. Like, if you date hot chicks, you are gonna meet gay guys in your day-to-day interactions. Yeah. And most of them are pretty fucking cool. Like most of them are pretty based. Like they might try to make a pass at you, but like the way you treat them, like just treat them like a chick. Like they'll give you the IOIs or whatever, but like they never cross the line because they have that fear of like, hey, if I cross the line with the wrong guy, I'm gonna get my ass kicked. That still exists today, but it's the same thing. Like if a guy crosses the line with a chick and she has a boyfriend next to her, like there's a good chance you might get your teeth kicked in. So you got to kind of socially calibrate yourself. But you said this last night in the post show, like, there's no drama between white guys and black guys. There's no drama between America and Mexicans. Really. There's no drama between gay guys and straight guys. Like no one really fucking cares.
Yeah,
if you sit next to someone
who's level, right?
If you sit next to someone who's different than you on a flight, then what do? You make small talk.
You talk to them like a normal.
You find
human.
commonalities and you stick to those commonalities, and you avoid the areas where you might differ significantly. That's just being a decent, socialized human being.
Some of my favorite dudes actually on flights, and I don't know why I get stuck next to these dudes particularly, but some of my favorite people on like longer commercial flights are old black men. I love
they're
old
wise.
Black men. They're they're very wise. My favorite. They've lived through all kinds of shit. They're super interesting people. And they just and a lot of them, and I guess I could probably get canceled for this too, but a lot of them have a lot of fucking pain in their voice and their past, and they've dealt with a lot of shit. And listening to them talk is really fucking eye opening, and I really enjoy that.
The human voice is actually a fingerprint. So like I've just gotten into singing in like the last year, which is good because I haven't trashed my voice. So I'm like, oh wow, like I actually have a clean voice. I don't have the raspiness, or I don't talk like I've smoked a pack of Marlboro Reds every day for the last 40 years, like an old trucker. If I overdo it on the weekends, I get to that point. But back to the topic, that Bud Light thing, I saw a meme going around from like one of my more like left leaning former friends or colleagues or peers or what have you. It just showed up on my timeline at some point. And it was the Brantley Gilbert concert. Someone threw a Bud Light up on stage, like, fuck this, and he threw it down. And in the comments, they're like, oh, what a hypocrite. He's doing a cover of a Freddie Mercury song. I'm like, he's not anti-gay. He's anti this like weird corporatist.
He's also not a drinker.
Yeah, but a lot of
drinking
people,
like two years ago.
A lot of people think today it's the trans topic. Tomorrow it'll be something else. Back then it was like, like women in the workforce or minorities in the workforce. All of that is an extension of social Marxism. That's people that want to consolidate power and have their power over you. And so Brantley Gilbert, he's covering a good song by a good musician. Like that, Under Pressure is a good song. Just because he crushed a Bud Light doesn't mean he's anti-gay. But you have these liberal people like, oh, does he not even realize who the artist is? I'm like, he's a professional musician. He knows who fucking Freddie Mercury is.
he's covering his song at a fucking concert, bro.
If you're a singer and you don't know who Freddie Mercury is, are you really a singer? Like, it doesn't matter. no one cares that Freddie Mercury
so funny.
fucked dudes back in like the 70s and died of AIDS. And it's actually kind of tragic. He did. He went out while he was on top, unfortunately, ended his career shortly. But just because I'm anti like wokeism doesn't mean I'm anti-gay. That's like, and it's weird. The mainstream will like they'll combine these ideas like, oh, if you don't like the fact that Bud Light went from blonde chicks with big tits and twins, or like the frogs in the 90s, like what's up? It went from that to like some dude in a fucking dress who thinks he's a chick. If you don't like that, then you're a homophobe. You're like, I'm just a dude with a blue collar job who drinks
doesn't
beer
understand why I'm drinking a beer with a fucking dude on the front that's dressed like a chick. I'm so confused.
It's like, all right, I'll go to Coors Light, which I never drank Bud Light anyways. I was more of a Coors guy. But if I'm gonna drink, if I'm gonna drink, I drink whiskey. And if I'm not gonna drink whiskey, then if I do beer, then it'll be like a craft beer or an IPA. Or I like local beers. I like to talk to the brewmaster and like, oh, what's on your brew bill, and oh, what'd you put into it, and they give you the tour and stuff. I like that experience. But if I'm sitting around a campfire and there's like a 30 bomb of Bud Light, Keystone Ice, Natty Ice, whatever, like. Those are all camping beers. Yeah. Like those are people.
It's like drinking a Hamm's. If it's there, it's there. Yeah.
Yeah. When you drink a Bud Light, you're normally not like, it's not like you're drinking a fine wine or like a port and you're putting your pinky out. The more you put your pinky out and you drink wine, it means the classier you are. Good social tip for you guys.
Big ass pinky too.
Yeah. Just put it out on the stem.
On camera though.
But like, I can't remember the last time I had a Bud Light.
I don't remember either. 10 years.
And when you do, it's usually not in the same type of cultural type situation where like gay or like alternative lifestyle people gravitate towards. So for me, like as a marketer at a corporate level, and I've worked for very, very big international and global companies. There's a reason I'm in Mexico City. It's a center point for the Spanish speaking world. That's why I originally came down here, amongst many reasons. But as someone who's done this my entire career, I was like, do you not understand who your fucking market is? Like, it's almost like you did that intentionally. And I wanted to ask Rich the other day when I was on his stream. Maybe I'll ask him this Saturday. But like, if you're a shareholder, if you're a shareholder in Anheuser-Busch, and you've seen that if you go woke, you go broke. You've seen what it does economically to these companies. As a marketer, you know how to destroy a brand, and what you do is you offend and castigate the audience, or you throw some ideology down their throats. Like, hey, I just want to drink beer. I don't really give a fuck about what this dude wants to do in his free time.
Sexuality has no place in beers.
So you alienate your audience. Well, as a marketer that you are going to suffer economically. So that being said, is there legal recourse for if you're like, hey, I'm a shareholder, can they do a class action lawsuit against these companies and be like, hey, you knew that you're going to crash the fucking share price doing this nonsense. Knock it off. You have a legal and fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders. You're fucking that up.
Yeah.
Although companies don't care, these big companies, they don't care about money anymore. They have the ESG, which is environmental social governance, and they have the DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. I've worked for one of the big four companies the last 4 years. They are shoving that shit down people's throats, but internally, we all knew it was bullshit. We'd laugh about it. Like, oh, let's analyze Walmart's DEI campaign, but internally we're like, like who the fuck buys this bullshit? Like people like Alex Jones talk about like the elites. I've worked in those circles of those people. They don't believe that nonsense. If you have an IQ over 100, or if you have an education that's equivalent to being above a third grade education in the US or Canada, then you know these things. These things are very obvious to you. If you don't, then maybe shut the fuck up. Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, who does drink Bud Light though?
I mean,
I don't even think that Bud Light was the most popular one. I actually think that it could have gone both ways, right? And I mean, could have gone both ways, being like Bud Light is probably, I mean, it's a popular beer, obviously. There's a ton of it around all over the place, and I'm not going to trash people who like Bud Light, but it fucking sucks. I'm just saying. So, but like, there's a million fucking beer companies out there. What would make you think that this particular situation, where like this particular person, would be a good idea to put in front of your beer drinking audience, which is predominantly men, number one, predominantly, well, I would just say, yeah, okay, we'll go with that. Yeah. Whether it's 60-40 or whatever.
Maybe the gays drink like Bud Light and Sprite. When I went to France, they put totally, Sprite in their beer. Right? I'm like, oh, it's pretty good, actually.
I'm just saying men in general. There are women that, obviously there's women like beer too, but at the end of the day, it's mostly men, and it's mostly straight men, right? It's mostly straight men that drink a shitload of fucking beer. And if they liked Bud Light, they're all of a sudden a Coors Light fan.
Yeah, I saw a video this morning saying something like in the first week following that whole like marketing public relations nightmare, it's something like Anheuser-Busch has lost $6 billion in market cap and Coors has grown like 9%, like in the course of a week.
In the
So
course of a week.
these things do have consequences. And again, it's not like for example, I can't remember the last time I drank a Bud Light, but next time I'm like, oh, I want like a watered down piss tasting beer. Okay, well, I'm not going to choose Bud Light because I did the same thing with Gillette with that fucking fiasco marketing wise they had years ago. Insulting your audience. You need to be a better man. I'm like, bitch, I'm just trying to fucking shave. Leave me alone.
Right.
I don't need to follow your political philosophy to get a close shave to my skin. And then
why
I
are
do
we
the
even
double
doing that
safety
in
razor
marketing
now.
for consumer products in the first place? Why isn't there a sense of neutrality? What are we doing?
Well, like corporate clients I've advised, I've worked for companies. I worked for a Peter Thiel company in California for years, and Peter Thiel's gay. And I remember the CEO for like the Pride Month. He's like, "Oh, you need to put the flag on there." I'm like, "Hey, like 85% of our alternative investment clients, they're like your rural red state Republican people, and they're older guys. They're like 80 years plus. So." No, like we are not going to alienate our audience. And I got into it, the CEO, and he's like, "Oh no, the CEO is gay too." It's like, "Oh, we have to do this. You know, it's really important we do this." And it went up to Teal, and Teal's like, "No, like we're not. Yeah. I'm not gonna fucking tank one of my portfolio companies because you have a political agenda. We're not doing that."
100%.
And I won that debate, but again, it's not me personally being anti-gay. It's like I have a job as a marketer to drive revenue.
Absolutely.
That's my only job, is to bring dollars in the door. I'm not gonna offend or off-put my target demographic. That's ridiculous. Why would anyone do that?
Well, and that's also like, you know, as far as how to escape the matrix, that's also a really interesting point too when we're talking about this type of stuff, because neither of us are anti-gay, neither of us are anti-trans, neither of us are I'm not even anti-Bud Light. Like, do whatever
I don't care.
I don't care. Like
no one has celebrated me fucking hot Latin chicks. I'm still waiting for my goddamn parade. Like, but I don't need one. You know what I mean? I walk out and live my daily life, and then I come home and when I'm behind closed doors, kill the stream, and then I live my personal life, my personal private life. No one really needs to know about that. Yes, I do talk about those topics if people ask me about them, but that was kind of accidental. It was just guys I hung out with, like, dude, you kind of have this down. Can you like help me out here? Like, oh shit, yeah, didn't realize that was a problem for most people. Yeah, let me break it down with my hyper analytical brain here, and I'll get back to you, bro.
It's kind of an interesting vibe though, because like you said, you're disconnected from American pretty much everything. Like this,
it's so nice.
Yeah, well, I mean, if I didn't have my phone in my face all the time, I'd be disconnected from it too, because I don't see anybody on a daily basis. I mean, I see you more than I see the person I sleep next to.
Yeah.
So I mean, like for me, in the middle of fucking Kansas, what are we doing in Kansas? We're working. We're doing stuff. We're paying the rent. We're cooking the food. We're raising kids. We're doing all that shit in Kansas. We don't have time for this shit. Like, we don't have time to sit around a boardroom and figure out how to piss everybody off. That doesn't make any fucking sense.
And for me, like as a casual consumer of content, if I'm going through like the YouTube feed and I see like some nonsense in my face, I'm just like, oh, you just skip right past it. You're like, oh, not for me. That's not for me. I don't get mad or make phone calls or write letters or go on social. Oh, I'm going to go on Twitter and demand that this company be canceled. I'm like, no, it's just not for me. You know, teach their own. Someone likes it. It's being recommended. Got 2 million views. Got a shit ton more views of my content.
Somebody's got to
like it. My
stuff's
not for everyone. Totally get it. That's fine.
Absolutely.
If you don't like me, unsubscribe. If you are getting value out of this, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, ring the notification bell, and enable all notifications for the channel.
And go to Rumble and subscribe.
Rumble.
Yeah, go to Rumble and subscribe so we can actually deep dive into this shit, because it's highly likely that this gets demonetized on YouTube very quickly, because we brought up about 8 fucking issues.
Guarantee.
I brought up about 8 issues that are probably unpopular as far as having a counter opinion.
Well, I was listening. I know he's big on Rumble, so I was listening to the recent Joe Rogan, Russell Brand podcast at the gym. It's like 3 hours long, but you know, my gym sessions are an hour, so I'm just getting into it. I'm an hour into it, but Russell Brand was talking about that. He's like, I was like a liberal lefty all growing up in like my background, and I was anti-corporatist and antitrust and all this. He's like, and then all of a sudden, like it just switched, and now I'm the asshole. He's like, and that's kind of how I feel too. Like the things I say in English publicly that get me demonetized and get me censored on YouTube, when I say these with like just random people, whatever social class, whatever race they are, Mexico's a very diverse country. People are always like, yeah, dude, like no, duh.
I was
Like,
talking about these issues.
of course, the American election was stolen. Like, we have 500 years of having corrupt governments. We know what that looks like. It was pretty fucking obvious.
Yeah.
If you don't know that, like, how do North Americans not realize your country and culture is being pulled out from underneath you? I'm like, I know, right? The people here aren't surprised. They're like, everyone knows that.
Well, it's funny because I was on the phone having a conversation similar to this, kind of getting mentally prepared to have this conversation with you. And I was walking and I was kind of talking loud because I had both my headphones in, and then I didn't see the lady working in her front yard giving me the fucking eye, dude. So hard. But yeah, and that was like none of her fucking business. I was walking by 50 feet from her, but I looked over and I waved at her, and she kind of did that, like, all right, whatever, dude, like wave at me. But that's the America we live in now, man. You can't have. I mean, we're not even saying shit that's unpopular. We're saying the shit that everybody's thinking.
Yeah, I have conversations with people from all walks of life, any country I go to, wherever I go. For whatever reason, I say, even since I was a little kid, I have a face that people want to talk to. So normally, like, when I walk around here, if they see my green eyes, they'll be like, oh, colored eyes. Like, they're really into that in Mexico. So I'll wear sunglasses. I have my AirPods in. Like, I'm just beelining, like, to the gym. I've got my destination. Right. But if I don't, then usually a lot of people come up and talk to me. Same in the US too. Like, random people at the airport, random people in stores. Like, when I lived in El Salvador, people would always ask me for directions. Like, I'm clearly not from El Salvador. Why is everyone asking me for directions? But the funny thing is, I knew how to get around because you look at reality. I have a nice view here. You see how the city's structured. You see how the streets are set up, and you can kind of figure it out. Like, I live in a weird neighborhood where all the streets are named after African lakes. I'm like, I've never even heard of these lakes before. But
like what kind of lakes? Like what's one of the names of the lakes?
I'm not going to give that out because there's weirdos out there, but yeah, at weird African lakes, like I can't even pronounce it.
African lakes.
Yeah, I'll drop you my pin in WhatsApp and you can see them all. But for whatever reason, I have a face that people want to talk to, and I have these conversations with people. Again, even in some of the spaces I congregate in, you have people like, and that's the goal. It's by design. You want to split people up. You want to have them at each other's necks. You want, like, whites versus blacks, gays versus straights, men versus women. Really, at the end of the day, like, no one really gives a fuck about anyone else. It's like everyone lives in their own little world, and they just want to make it a little better day by day, whatever that looks like. So when guys that are caught in their own bubble or trapped in their own reality, good or bad or in between, which is where most of us kind of fall, and then you hear something that has nothing to do with you, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, it's just not for me. But when it's constantly put in front of your face, and then not only that, you're like, okay, not for me, it's constantly put in front of your face, but then it's like, you have a problem. Actually, yeah, in the comments, yeah, they nailed on them, the weird African lakes. If you have yeah, that's literally like a street a couple blocks over. If you have a problem with that, then there's a problem with you fundamentally as a human being. And that's where people are like, whoa, like, hey, I don't like Bud Light that much. Like, I'm not a huge fan of Gillette. I just go to the store and buy a cartridge razor. Like, if you're buying disposable razors and you're not really into shaving, like the double-edged safety razor is way better if you're like really ballsy, do like the straight edge single blade. But like, if you're buying Gillette, like, you really don't give a shit about shaving. You just
right.
It's kind of like, oh, it's there. Okay,
yeah. I gotta shave my face or shave my neck. For me, it's that guy. That's all I get.
Yeah, the double-edged safety razor is so much easier. Like, practice on your arm or like a limb or something, because you probably will cut yourself at first. But really, once you get it, like, dude, I never cut myself. I cut when I travel because I travel light, so I can't take. A lot of countries, they don't like you taking the blades with you. So like, I'll take a disposable or a cartridge razor. Dude, I always cut myself. It's just not a good shave. But with the Gillette thing, you had people like, oh yeah, they're against masculinity. Fuck Gillette. We're going to boycott that. And then you had other people on the other side. They're like, oh, well, you're a bunch of misogynists because you don't like Gillette. Like, I just want to shave. I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah. And then Harry's comes out. We're all fucking on target.
Yeah. Right.
Hilarious. Oh man.
So this hour's coming up quick. Maybe we can go a little bit over, but so let's see. Let's go, Benjamin. Yeah, we started a little late and still figuring out the rumble sync. You have to do like some manual stuff on the technical side. Moderate is now right of center. Yeah, that's the craziest thing. When did that happen?
Really weird.
Empires typically tend to fold from within. That is true. I saw the shift to Wokeness happen in 2023. Yeah, it's weird not living in the U.S. because you see it trickling into the society here, but it's kind of like the U.S. in the 90s in terms of cultural attitudes, which is nice, which unfortunately Mexico will get to that point unless they get their shit together. But it'll be interesting in 2024. They have an election here. The U.S. has an election, and who knows how long Trudeau is going to be in power, you parliamentary people. Learn how to learn. Yeah, that's the best thing to learn. From one thing, know 10,000 things. Miyoto Mus. Oh, I don't know Japanese.
Masashi,
Miyoto Musashi. Yep.
I believe.
Yeah, I only know Japanese when I order sushi, and then I'm an expert. Saluditos, bro.
Right. That's funny.
You really start changing what music you like when you start consuming this content. I assume it's referring to mine, and I'm not going to put the name of the African lake on there because it's close to my neighborhood. Although I always tell people, like, if you want to dox me or find me, go ahead. There's a lot of security here, and they're very well armed, and I'm very well liked where I live. So have fun with that. See how well that works out for you. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to come and try to steal you.
Nah. I mean, that takes a lot of effort.
190-pound man. Come on now. Really?
Yeah. Fly down to Mexico City and like, all right, like, good luck. There's like 30, 40 million people here.
Even if somebody got their fucking hands on you, by the time you got in the car and started driving wherever the fuck, they would drop your ass off because you would make them feel so stupid for what they're doing.
I have a vantage point too when it comes to personal defense. Let's just say that. I don't. There's topics that I don't touch even in like the post shows because, well, you just don't. You don't give away your home defense plan. That's always kind of a stupid idea.
Yeah, my home defense plan. I got a thing of golf clubs behind me, so if somebody tries to come into my place, first off, we don't got shit here. So
I'm a big proponent of outsourcing the violence. Like, all right, there's armed security all around here. And then like, if I have leftovers or if I cook something or whatever, you just offer it to people and you chat with them and you become their friends. Like this is a weird thing in American culture. It's a good thing to be well liked by your neighbors, like people that live in the same building as you. It's really good to be well known and well liked. That
people don't do that anymore.
A lot of potential problems for you.
What's up?
My neighbor here is so cute. Like I was playing a couple weeks ago, and I was walking out, and I had like my EDC tank top on, and she's like, "Oh, do you go to the music festival?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's pretty cool." And she's like, "Oh, what night did you play?" I'm like, "Oh, how sweet! You think I'm actually good enough to play a music festival?" Like I just get high and do Instagram reels, but all right, like, oh, thanks, sweetheart.
That sounds fucking awesome.
So yeah, we cleared out some of these comments. Was there anything else we wanted to touch on this topic, or we can end at the hour and then break it into another one? I think this conversation became more of kind of like, what is the Matrix and how did it get to be? We can go a little longer if you want to talk about escaping it in terms of what your story looks like and what mine looks like, or we can table that for tomorrow.
I mean, it doesn't bother me either way. I think we may need to stop at the hour just for the sake of the experiment that we're doing, and then we can continue how to escape the Matrix 2 or continued tomorrow if we want to do that.
Let's do it.
Even in a separate stream. I don't mind that either.
Yeah, we can do that in a separate stream. So for now, then let's go ahead and wrap it up. Steve, do you have any takeaways? Nope, deuce.
Well,
not
really.
Sips from a Bud Light.
Yeah, I'm gonna go grab me a 30-pack of Bud Light real quick. I'll be back. We can talk about how to escape the Matrix. No, I mean, just think for yourself. Like, really, that's kind of that's the basis of all of what we're saying. Find a way to make money for yourself. Get out of the bullshit. If you can get a passport, that's probably the best case. Like I said, we can continue on talking about that tomorrow as far as
let's go ahead.
Evacuation plans and principles and things like that to live by as far as escaping the Matrix. I've been unemployed, we'll just put it that way, for a very long time, and seem to be doing okay for myself. So I think I can speak pretty well on that topic. But other than that, no.
So guys, as we mentioned, we're trying some new things with the channel. We're trying out new platforms. We're going to start capping these at an hour. So if you like this conversation, we will pick it up tomorrow. Today, the topic was how to escape the Matrix. We more or less just broke down what the Matrix is, how it came to be, and what that means for modern society. Got a little academic about it. Tomorrow, we'll talk about like our individual experiences. And those who had followed me for a while, you kind of know how I went about that. In terms of more information, if you want to have these conversations like behind a paywall and a little more private to where you can get up on stage, we respect your anonymity. We can really dive into this stuff, like stuff that's not safe for public consumption, so to speak, as per the Google gods or powers who be. Well, then the way to do that is to join the top 10% men's group. That is a group of men that are looking to level up in all areas of love and life by building lives worth living and loving. It's a group with myself, Richard Cooper of Entrepreneurs in Cars, and a handful of other admins in the Top 1% Generals group. We have a lot of engagement there. We have a lot of discussion. We do at least calls weekly. We have a monthly sanction calls. We do meetups. So it's a really a good way to get around like-minded guys. If you have that question, like, hey, like, where do I find guys like me? Well, that's where you do it. It's $9.97 lifetime membership fee, and that gives you all sorts of discounts on premium products and other group memberships. If you have any more questions for me, you can follow me on Instagram at Jaron Scott. You can also check us out on your major podcasting platforms. If you haven't done so, be sure to like, subscribe, and share the video. Ring the notification bell and enable all notifications. Leave any comments below if you have anything to add to the conversation, and we look forward to continuing it with you tomorrow. Until next time,
and go follow us on Rumble.
Yep. Yeah, follow us on Rumble. We shall bid you all